The neon reflections on rain-slicked New York streets had barely faded when Detective Isabella Raven arrived at the scene. This time, it wasn't just another cold case. A victim lay sprawled in a shadowy alley, his lifeless eyes staring at a broken promise of justice. The victim's identity was unremarkable, and yet the meticulous details at the scene told a story that was anything but ordinary. Isabella crouched beside the body as uniformed officers taped off the area. While others noted the obvious, a shallow stab wound and disturbed pavement, she observed the subtle irregularities, an almost invisible pattern of scratches on the wall, the faint, lingering trace of an unfamiliar chemical odor, and a whiff of something sweet beneath the metallic tang of blood. Each element resonated with her as if whispering secrets only she could decipher. Over the next several days, Isabella plunged into a painstaking investigation that defied conventional methods. Late nights at the precinct turned into a solitary vigil. Stacks of files piled high on her desk, each containing the names and faces of those who had mysteriously vanished over recent months. There was Michael Trent, Emily Carter, Daniel Reyes, and now this new victim. The frequency of the disappearances had escalated, and a grim pattern was emerging on the map she'd painstakingly annotated with colored pins and cryptic notes. They formed a near-perfect arc around the city's heart, as though an unseen hand was methodically corralling its prey. Working side by side with her skeptical partner, Detective Jake Moran, Isabella combed through security footage, re-interviewed potential witnesses, and consulted with forensic experts whose findings only deepened the mystery. "There's something wrong here, Jake," she would murmur in the dead of night, her eyes scanning over grainy images and scrutinizing every minute detail. "Every time I think we have it figured out, another piece of the puzzle shifts." Jake, a seasoned detective with an eye for practical details, found himself increasingly perplexed by her insistence on pursuing leads that defied logic. Yet, time and again, Isabella's subtle hints, the discarded scrap of fabric found near an alley, the smear of blood that looked more deliberate than accidental, the sound of a distant engine that arrived too early, proved invaluable. They led them, step by painstaking step, into the darkest corners of the city's underbelly. One chilly evening, while revisiting the original crime scene, Isabella's intuition drew her toward a narrow fire escape. Recalling a fleeting glimpse of movement from a previous disappearance, she ascended the rusted ladder. At the top, she discovered a forced-open skylight that beckoned her to explore further. Hidden above the ordinary world was an abandoned storage room where dust danced in the meager moonlight. Amongst piles of forgotten crates, her trained eyes caught sight of a glimmer, a metal hook with a torn piece of light fabric clinging to it, much like the clues seen in blurred security footage. Inside that room, a disturbing scene unfolded. The odor of a chemical anesthetic mingled with a faint sweetness that hinted at something almost otherworldly. Isabella carefully bagged the fabric and photographed the area before making her way back down, her mind racing with questions. Who orchestrated these disappearances? What was the significance of the chemical, a substance that rendered victims helpless before their final abduction? And why did the victims, once left behind, appear devoid of the very essence that made them human? In the forensic lab, the analysis of the fabric and chemical residue brought minimal answers but sparked more questions. The compound was not one routinely used in hospitals or industrial settings. Its formulation was rare, reminiscent of outdated alchemical recipes. Isabella couldn't shake the feeling that these clues were pieces of a much larger, sinister design, a design that stretched its tendrils into the occult and ancient beliefs. Her investigation led her next to the abandoned meat processing plant on the city's outskirts. The building, with its broken windows and rusting machinery, exuded a macabre silence. Inside, Isabella discovered a refrigerated room that defied expectation. Metal tables lined the walls, and upon them lay the bodies of several missing individuals. Their skin was unnaturally pale, and their blood, once vibrant, had vanished as if absorbed by something or someone. The sight sent a cold shiver down her spine. She knelt beside one body, her gloved fingers tracing the contours as she muttered. They were drained, not just of life, but of everything that makes them alive. The discovery forced her to reconsider every lead. Over several grueling nights, Isabella worked to connect the dots, a trail of forgotten documents, faded newspaper clippings, and whispered warnings from unreliable informants. One article mentioned a bankrupt meat processing plant sold to a mysterious investor, a detail that now resonated with alarming clarity. The semicircular pattern on her map, suggested that the disappearances were not random acts of violence, but part of a calculated effort to feed a dark agenda. Isabella's relentless pursuit of the truth eventually guided her to a secluded mansion far from the city's glaring neon lights. Here, behind thick, ivy-covered walls, Victor Martel and his enigmatic Cabal were rumored to meet. Rumors had swirled for months about this clandestine group, whispers of occult rituals and ancient practices believed to grant forbidden powers. Isabella approached the mansion with a mixture of determination and trepidation, fully aware that she was treading dangerous ground. Before her entry, she meticulously surveyed the perimeter, noting every detail: a slightly ajar window, a barely audible hum of activity from within, and the echo of hushed voices that drifted through the night. Under the cover of darkness, she infiltrated the mansion, navigating its labyrinthine corridors with a practiced stealth that belied the chaos of the investigation. In a grand, candlelit dining hall, a table was set for a gathering that exuded both opulence and menace. At the head sat Victor Martel, his gaze icy and calculating. Isabella waited in the shadows, gathering the final pieces of evidence. A silver charm in the shape of a musical note that once belonged to one of the victims, the torn fabric from the storage room, and documents implicating Martel's organization in the systematic abduction of innocents. Her presence went unnoticed until she finally chose to reveal herself. With deliberate, controlled steps, she strode into the room and declared, "It's over, Martel." The reaction was instantaneous, a mix of shock, disbelief, and a flicker of something deeper in Martel's eyes as he registered the depth of her resolve. For a moment, time itself seemed to slow. Isabella's eyes caught the light in a way that suggested she was more than she appeared. There was an almost imperceptible shift in her demeanor, a silent transformation that sent a ripple of unease through the room. Martel's scornful smile faltered as he muttered, "Who are you?" His voice trembled on the edge of recognition. Without revealing more than necessary, Isabella replied, "I am Justice." Her words, cold and measured, echoed through the hall. In that charged moment, as she moved with a speed and precision that defied explanation, Victor Martel's composure broke. Before he could react, Isabella had incapacitated him, her actions swift and methodical. A culmination of nights spent unraveling a conspiracy that had long evaded the grasp of ordinary investigators. But the investigation was far from over. As sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of backup, Isabella vanished into the labyrinthine corridors of the mansion, leaving behind a scene that would puzzle and haunt those who arrived after. In the ensuing days, Detective Jake Moran pieced together the evidence left behind, a trail of clues that pointed to an underworld steeped in ancient rituals and occult symbolism. Yet, the most unsettling aspect was Isabella's transformation in that final confrontation. Her actions, her uncanny ability to detect the slightest anomaly, and that momentary change in her presence were a mystery in themselves. Now, as the investigation deepened, the case evolved into something far more complex than a series of random disappearances. It was a slow-burning inquiry into a hidden subculture that exploited the vulnerable, driven by beliefs that blurred the lines between myth and reality. Isabella continued her work, her eyes ever watchful for the next subtle hint, the next elusive clue that would lead to the truth behind the abductions. Every piece of evidence, every whispered rumor, only deepened the enigma surrounding her own capabilities. Detective Jake, now more conflicted than ever, watched as Isabella's methods grew bolder and more unconventional. Her intuition, her perceptive grasp of the smallest detail, and that brief, unspoken transformation left him wondering if she was simply the best detective he'd ever known, or if there was something else at work. In the shadows of New York's underbelly, amidst the echoes of forgotten secrets and the scent of chemical anesthetics, one question gnawed at the edges of every mind. What exactly was Isabella Raven? The truth, as elusive as the mist that blanketed the city's dark corners, remained tantalizingly out of reach. In the quiet moments before dawn, when the city seemed to hold its breath, Isabella would stand alone, a solitary figure against a backdrop of injustice, forever straddling the line between the ordinary and the inexplicable. And while answers may come slowly, one thing was certain: the search for truth was far from over, and the night still held secrets that no one dared to fully unveil.